Okay, so the news today is mostly political, and I want to start with this. Liz Truss, the British Prime Minister, quit, and it was an exceptionally short term. So she served for 45 days in office. She's the shortest serving leader in British history. And she says, I can't deliver on the mandate for which I was elected by the Conservative Party, and so that's why she's quitting. Now, there's a really interesting quirk in the British system. When they go out and do something, if it fails, they resign. It's a little strange to an American mind because Biden could be a complete train wreck, but he's not thinking about quitting. He's thinking about serving his term and maybe running again. The Brits have just kind of a different thing. I'm not sure that I fully understand it. If you're British, please inform me of why exactly that is. I know that Churchill was about to resign, or was worried that FDR was going to have to resign at a certain point when something didn't go right for him. So, but that's what's happened here. Now, the reason that this is a big story is because she was a big supporter of Ukraine. Boris Johnson was a tremendous supporter. Liz Truss was a tremendous supporter. I think whoever comes next is probably going to be just as ardent. RT carried this article that a top Ukrainian official was shocked by U.S. aid comments. So the comments came from Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy is about to become the Speaker of the House. The Republicans are going to win the House of Representatives in about a week, 2 weeks out. And he said this, I think people are going to be sitting in a recession and they're not going to write a blank check to Ukraine. They just won't do it. So what he's doing is he's positioning himself in internal U.S. policy against what the Democrats are doing in all kinds of ways, and in this kind of way as well. Now, there's two wings in the Republican Party. I'm a Republican. There's a kind of Reagan Republican Party, and there's kind of a Trump Republican Party. And the Trump Republicans tend to be more isolationist, and then there's kind of a middle ground. So I saw McCarthy's comments on Fox News, and then I saw some middle grounders saying, well, look, we're all in favor of supporting democracies, but we have to, know what the end game is. Or they would say things like the United States is the arsenal of democracy, or something along those lines. So there's still a Republican ardor to support Ukraine, but there's also a wing within the Republican Party that is kind of like the peace wing of the Democrat Party, but it's not for peace, it's as a nationalist. One of the interesting nuances of this is that they were talking about how it's not so much that the Americans won't pay up, it's that they want the Europeans to step up more before they're expecting Americans to do it. So I think that's a fair split of this. And by the way, it's going to happen. The Republicans are going to take the House in a big way. It's a big projected win. And this is from 538, which tends to lean a little bit to the left. They're predicting that the Democrats were favored for the Senate, and I don't see that happening either. I think both the House and the Senate will turn red in about 2 weeks, and that's my prediction. I could be completely wrong, but I think that that's what's going to happen. Nonetheless, I don't think that it's going to cause problems for Ukraine. At minimum, you have Lend-Lease, which Biden can do and kind of circumvent and go around. But I don't think it'll come to that because Republicans, I saw a poll early on where Democrats favored Ukraine intervention more, but Republicans were actually they didn't favor it as much because of that Trump isolationist wing, but they were actually saying that we're not doing enough. They had a greater intensity. So we'll see how this all plays out. But at any rate, there's another story here as well, and that is in 2 weeks, the RT and Pravda and TASS, they're going to make huge headlines saying, see, Joe Biden's party got beat up, and it's because they were supporting Russia, and that's what they're going to do. They were going to get beat up anyway. That's just a reality. Whoever is in power, the president, they usually lose seats in the midterm. Their party loses seats. So that's what's going on there. Okay, Steinmeier assures Zelensky of Germany's unwavering solidarity and support. Okay, so Steinmeier is the German federal president. Now, what does that mean? I thought we were talking about the chancellor. Well, the chancellor actually holds most of the power, but the federal president is at the top of the pile, and then the chancellor is really where the locus of power is. This is the German government system. It's a little complex. This is really interesting. The Germans have an opportunity to kind of put the Nazi uh, being the bad guy in the world kind of back in the past by becoming a defender of Ukraine in the present, by becoming a defender of a democracy that's clearly being attacked by an aggressor. So I hope the Germans realize and seize that opportunity. This is Zaluni. He's talking about his air defense is actually working fairly well. Somebody asked me the other day because I was saying, okay, so now that the Russians have done this, the Ukrainians are getting this air defense system from Britain, from France, from Germany, from the United States, perhaps even from some from Israel, maybe even getting some Iron Dome kind of technology from Israel. And they said, well, I thought they have air defense. They do have some air defense. It's not as solid as it needs to be by any means, but they do have something, and they're maximizing what they have, no doubt. But some things are still getting through. So I wanted to clarify that bit. So they're doing the best they can with what they have. Nevertheless, 30 to 40% of their power grid has been affected by this, damaged, destroyed in some way, to the point that there's blackouts that are intentional in order to not overload the systems. So they're in bad shape. Um, now, this was another interesting article. The Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group. Russian invaders destroy memorial to the victims of the Holodomor. Okay, the Holodomor, if you aren't familiar with this, it was this famine, this man-made famine that Stalin created to punish Ukrainians. So he didn't like that Ukrainians, or he thought they were like holding back on the wheat production or something along those lines, and he doesn't like Ukrainians to begin with. And so he took their grain and gave it to other parts of Russia and essentially starved them. And millions, literally millions, starved. Okay, so that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares enough about Ukraine to listen to me talk.